Fall is my favorite time of year. Just cozy up on the couch, have some hot chocolate, a little soup, get under a blanket. I love when the leaves are changing. It's a great time in Chicago. And Tommy John is here to help you feel more comfortable than ever. Their underwear has solved every problem you can find with underwear and loungewear. It's breathable, lightweight fabric that has 4 times the stretch of competing brands, and it has a non-rolling waistband and legs that never ride up. Tommy John loungewear is also guaranteed to fit perfectly with comfy, non-pilling micromodal fabric and a luxuriously soft tri-blend fabric with flexible 4-way stretch. I got the Tommy John Second Skin pajamas recently. I wear them all the time. They're one of my favorite things to throw on as I'm settling in for the night. We got back from dinner last night. I was excited to go throw them on and sit down on the couch. I absolutely love them, and this time of year when you're looking for something cozy, I can't recommend anything more. Go to TommyJohn.com/athletic right now for 25% off lounge and sleepwear. 25% off lounge and sleepwear at TommyJohn.com/athletic. TommyJohn.com/athletic. See site for details.
This is the Athletic Football Show.
Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays. Joining me today, it's my good friend Nate Tice. Nate, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well. Lucky number 7. We're getting into the bye weeks. We got everything. I feel good. I think last week it was a nice little build up to a couple of really big games, and then now it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Now we're back to kind of trying to pick and choose what's interesting in the season. But that's what makes the season fun. There's always something to talk about. So here we are.
The fall off is so big between what the games looked like last week and what they look like now. That we're doing something a little bit different on this week's preview show. We're going to talk about the Niners defense against the Chiefs offense as our matchup of the week a little bit later, get into some of the other bits of news, guys coming back from injury, Dak, Tua, people like that. But I want to start by going under the hood this week. Typically we do this with one unit, right? We'll talk about a unit that's struggling, somebody that needs to make some tweaks. I want to expand that conversation to the league in general, because one of the bits of dialogue and discourse we've been having so far this season, there's been some ugly football. That Monday night game, that was really the prevailing thought that I think a lot of people had watching that game is, man, this is gross. Like, what is happening right now with all of these games? So I want to dig in on a wider level and try to figure out why that might be happening. Points are down, scoring is down. 1.89 points per drive this season. It was 2.04 last year. And even last year was a step down offensively from what we'd seen over the last 3-4 seasons. So why is that happening? Why is offense depressed? And why does football seem uglier in 2022? What is your first hypothesis here?
Well, I also want to say that sometimes in, a good horror movie, I know you're not a horror guy, but sometimes in the grotesqueness, there's beauty. And I think that's kind of where I'm at. This NFL season's like the Pan's Labyrinth of NFL seasons. It's like the monsters are actually beautiful and everything. But I really, my first prevailing thought is that the Shanahan housing bubble burst a little bit. And this is the defense is striking back in a sense that protection wise, and I think that Broncos and Chargers game was a great snapshot of it because, one, everybody's paying attention as they are in national TV games, but also those overhead spider cam views were also showing kind of what's going on with some of these protections. And I think what's going on is a lot of the offenses, and especially in the Shanahan offense, I'm not saying Shanahan's offense is like this is bad or anything. This is just the way they do it, is they have hots built into their passing game. And I think it's because why they have the hots built in is they say, we don't have to adjust anything. We are going to set and forget our protection. When you do a 6-man protection, the 3-man side slide, the center, a guard, and a tackle is always typically away from the running back side. The Shanahan offenses feature a lot of motion, so they don't want to lose the rhythm of their offense by setting it, stopping, resetting it, and they just like having a flow with their offense. And they say they're going to have an advantage by the formation, by the motion, and we'll figure it out. And if not, we have a hot throw and you can get rid of the ball and find a guy. But what's happening is defenses have figured this out. and they are fine with making you throw hot. And this is just the passing game. All that motion and shifting, the center points and goes, we are good. And defenses go, you're good, but we're going to make you not good. And all that, there's no resetting. And I think that game really showed that, where there's a lot of the one where Derwin James. I always get Devin White and Derwin James. I don't know why.
Interesting.
Right? Those two, for whatever reason, just break my brain. But anyways, the sack that he got was an empty formation from the Broncos. And on that formation, and this is just a little snapshot from the Broncos offense. And it was not just one error they made. It was two errors they made. One was the running back was aligned to the left. So empty is automatically 5-man protection, almost always. But they are in this 5-man protection. The center, Cushionberry, is going to the right. Okay, we're good. Even though everything on the defense, the safety shift, everything should have repointed this to the left.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't do that. So okay, cool. That's fine. Okay, that's one domino missing. This is like an airplane crashing. So, like 7 things have to go wrong for this to happen. Then on top of it, James comes through the B gap, and in 5-man protection is if the number count isn't right, the offensive tackles are taught to squeeze it. So you make it the longest path to the quarterback. And on this play, the left tackle doesn't even squeeze it. So James just has a clear shot right at Russell Wilson. Boom, it's a sack. And that is right then and there kind of what is happening with the league. I think there's a lot of centers that aren't aware or are not taught it's not part of the rule structure to reset their point and to get into the right protection and let's block this up and gash them down the field. I think what one team, really the best team right now in the league, the Bills, they faced this issue last year where they were facing simulated pressures and they were getting blitzed out of stuff and Josh Allen has to get rid of the ball. Now you look at the game against the Chiefs and they're running 7-man protection, blocking it all up, and Josh Allen's hitting over the top to Gabe Davis for a touchdown, which is the play I broke down for Wind the Clock. So make sure you go check that out on YouTube. But all this is to say, and this will be my last point with this, is when all these simulated pressures where you're showing a blitz but only rushing 4, that is breaking the rules of the hot. When you throw hot, that was taught for years and years and years as a quarterback. Throwing hot is replacing the blitz. If I have two guys, the Mike and the Sam are coming off the strong side, I'm hitting the slant or the crosser or that voided part of the coverage. Now these guys are blitzing, but there's no voided part of the coverage. So I am hot. Our protection's busted, but now I'm throwing right into a guy getting tackled for a 3-4 yard gain.
Or you're too scared to even throw it because you see that color and you're just going to eat it.
It's covered. And so this is just, it's taken away one of the answers that offenses have had for years and years and years. The defense just caught up to the rules that they have. And I think, and we'll talk about a different team later, but the teams that do sit there, get to the right spot, are able to attack down the field. I'll give one more stat. I'm sorry. I know I just talked for like 10 straight minutes, but one last stat I had with this, and this is kind of, I was looking at empty and just from 2019, 20 and 21 compared to this year. So 3-year sample size of 1. Blitz and pressure rates out of empty are almost exactly the same from this year to those years. So I was like, okay, that's okay. Maybe not what I thought. This is theory, right? This is what you do. This is my thesis on this. But the one thing that was down was air yards out of empty.
Sure.
It's down half a yard. And that's because quarterbacks are having to throw hot. But it's not like the EPA is not up. Nothing is up out of empty. So now they're just throwing shorter and they're getting tackled shorter. So it's just, that's what's going on. It's just these rules are these defenses now know what offenses are trying to do, and they're getting gamed out of it. Certain offenses, I should say.
So the third down pass protection stuff is kind of where I would start with it as well. I asked a bunch of coaches this week. I was like, what do you guys think the answer is? And I got a bunch of different answers. And awesome. It's a fascinating conversation. So the third down stuff is where I would start. If you think back to when offense was kind of at its height over the last 5 years, that 2018 19 stretch when Mahomes won the MVP and all of that, offenses were rolling. Okay. In 2018 on third down, teams were averaging 0.13 EPA per dropback on third down. This year it's 0.02.
That's ridiculous.
It's a monumental shift. I mean, it's such a huge difference. So I think the biggest difference on third down right now is that we have a group of defensive coaches that has become very, very, very good at just snapping offensive protection rules.
Yep.
There are a couple teams I would go to here, and a couple teams that do it very differently, but I think really kind of give you an example of why this is happening. The Cowboys have one of the lowest blitz rates in the NFL.
Yep.
Blitzing on like 19.7% of opponent dropbacks. but the way they rush the passer is incredibly difficult to deal with. On top of having some monsters doing it, the way they're lining up and how they're creating matchups and how you don't know which four are coming, that's screwing with protection rules, even if you're not blitzing.
Yeah.
Even teams that aren't necessarily doing that in the matchup game and they line up in more traditional format fronts, there's a lot of overload fronts. Think about what we talked about with the Jets game last week, how they were in those overload fronts consistently, tons of stunts in games, playing with offensive line continuity, all of that. And then you have a team like the Broncos who's blitzing a ton in a million different ways. So I think the amount of defensive coordinators who are consciously looking at how to break protection rules on third down, and offenses and centers and quarterbacks that aren't equipped to deal with those protection rules, in part because so much of the league is inflexible because it comes from that one tree, that's a huge part of this.
Yes.
The extension of it is that, again, it kind of goes back to the Shanahan offense taking over and that becoming so prevalent, so many teams running it. More teams than ever, I think, have become very, very good at having a good early down plan for those sorts of offenses and offenses in general. In 2018, 4 teams averaged 6 or fewer players in the box on half of early downs. 4. This year, it's 9. It's twice as many. And rushing efficiency hasn't increased because I think teams have gotten really good at understanding how to defend the run with light boxes. We've had years to figure this out. Some of it is stunting with a 4-man front. Talked to a head coach who's a play caller this week. He said that more teams are stunting the run than ever before, and it makes it really hard to deal with, even if you're dealing with 4-man fronts.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that teams are doing, the Broncos, again, are a very good example of this. The amount of like penny fronts that we're seeing. So a 5-man front with one linebacker where you can play too high in the back end with your nickel defensive back personnel, but still have 5-man surfaces that are difficult to block. We're seeing more and more of that. And I think that the fact that we have more light boxes on early downs, but fewer, but not as increased rushing efficiency is huge. And if you look at like play action rates and play action efficiency on first down, that has decreased over the last few years. Because think about it. If you're in a too high shell on first down, this is like at the core of how you're attacking these Shanahan McVay teams. If you're in a too high shell on first down and you rotate that defense into cover 3 or wherever you rotate it to, while the quarterback has his back turned while he's executing a play action fake, that's the nature of fucking with those offenses.
Yep.
And that's the type of defenses you're seeing now. So I think that is a huge part of it. And those are kind of the 2 things I landed on. There are some more things I want to dig into, and I'm curious what you think about that.
Oh no, I especially the play action stuff with, and this is something I noticed, it's just because teams see it more and more and more. It's defenses, and defensive players. Coaches, of course, are proliferating throughout the league that are understanding this too. It's modernizing. They've modernized defenses, but the players understand it too. It's those
to catch up with modernized offenses.
Yes, and offensive. Everything gets distilled in the NFL. It's a play might be awesome for a while, and it's like, whoa, what's the answer to this? Holy shit, we can't guard this, we can't block this, or we can't score points against this. And then, okay, you start finding answers, and okay, what sticks? And that's when people say copycat league. It's more like, no, just the distilled versions. Everything becomes very pure, for better or for worse. Sometimes you want it to be unpure and get a little creativity in there, sometimes football coaches. But why I say that is because the defensive ends and edge players are understanding the different types of nakeds that these Shanahan offenses use. And you're just using play action as well. Those bootlegs and nakeds, the one thing Shanahan and their offenses did, and I remember even 10, 12 years ago when they were in Washington, the Shanahan tree, the literal Shanahans, Mike and Kyle, was I had several coaches because I was watching NFL film. This is when I was at Wisconsin, and this is just my weird world that I lived in. And I'm at the Bears facility watching, and I had Paul Christ ask me, hey, can you check what the Washington does on nakeds and bootlegs? Because I want to know the rules. And what they do is they have the delayed release. Usually a naked is this tight end slams down, he releases into the flat. What the Shanahan offenses were doing was basically having 2 of those guys releasing to the flat. And so you have almost like you have a slide guy, and then you have another guy releasing behind him. Defenses are aware of that now. Like they understand how to, that's not new. That's not different. That's not the one-off. Oh, we play Washington, we play Cleveland, but blah, 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 blah. We have to know this. That's not just the one of 32 teams or 31 teams that we go against that we have to focus. Now it's a dozen. Now it's 15 that do that. And because that's proliferated throughout the league, defenses understand, oh, this is the rules. This is our base rules now. And that's just one part of what happens is the Shanahan offenses became big because everybody was running single high. Now most teams are running too high, and now the rules have changed. And even the run game stuff is so interesting with the slants and all that type of stuff, because when you would play these defenses now are gap and a half, which is kind of a hybrid 3-4-4-3 rules. And at 3-4, it was always, stack and shed. That's what those 3 defensive linemen do, keep the off-ball linebackers clean. Now these guys are shooting gaps and everything. They're playing head up. They're playing 2-eye. You don't get the cloth that you used to get on these double teams. Double teams have changed. And when they run, so if we can't get the cloth and everything, okay, we're going to run counter schemes. We're going to run gap schemes because that's better against these type of 3-down fronts. But now they're slanting and twisting. You know what's not great against slanting and twisting? Pulling guys, because now they lose and the gaps are all wrong. You got a guard pulling into a center who's trying to block a guy that's slanting across his face. So now it's like, oh, shoot, now what do we do? And so now I think like inside zone's getting a little bit better as opposed to outside zone. So like weak side zone, I think pin pull has proliferated a lot because of just how the edginess or the edge that you can get against these types of defenses. Those are the answers the teams are finding, but now everyone's equipped to run that. So it's offenses right now are kind of a half step back because they've gotten kind of slapped around a little bit by these defenses right now.
I think the Broncos, to me, are the team I keep coming back to because we're watching all these disgusting Broncos games. And part of that is because of the way the Broncos offense looks. But part of that is what the Broncos defense is doing to the teams that they're playing against. Right. And to me, they're like the purest distillation of these ideas. The Broncos right now have the 6th lowest percentage of plays, the 6th highest percentage of plays with 6 or fewer men in the box on early downs. The Broncos do. They are 3rd in defensive success rate on those plays. 3rd. So they're playing with some of the lightest boxes in the league, and they're one of the best run defenses in the league. And then you look at what they're doing on 3rd down. They have the 2nd highest pressure rate in the NFL. They have the 5th highest blitz rate. But even when they're not blitzing, they're bringing it in so many different weird kind of ways. Yep. So, and the fact that is a branch off of this Fangio tree. Everyone talked about the too high stuff with Fangio. That was what mattered in that defensive system proliferating around the league. I was talking to an offensive play caller last summer when very stuck with me. He said, it's not just that. So what Vic Fangio did better than anybody is he understands how to manipulate your protections. He can keep the back in by the way he does this kind of stuff. So you see some of these younger defensive coordinators that are branches off of that tree, either directly or indirectly. Brandon Staley's blitzing a ton more this year for the Chargers. You look at some of the pressure stuff that Jonathan Gannon is doing in Philadelphia, even though he's not technically off that tree, but they run the same ideas and the same stuff. And then Evero came from LA, where Brandon Staley was and Raheem Morris was, and he's taken this thing to a different level with all the pressure packages that they're using. This is a simplistic thing to say. Defensive coaching has just gotten better over the last 3 or 4 years. And I was talking to an offensive play caller today, and he was saying that over the last couple of years, people talk. And 4 or 5 years ago, it was really easy for offenses to dictate and understand and gather information about what defenses were doing, right? If I line up in this stack, if I use this motion, if I put the running back at the number 1 spot, I know what you're in. I know exactly what you're in, and I can just call my man beaters or my zone beaters based on the information that I've extracted by formation or motion. We talked about this last week in relation to the Cowboys, how they'll line up with the linebacker out over the running back at number 1 and play cover 2. A lot of defenses are doing that now because defensive coordinators heard all of those rumblings about how easy it was for offenses to extract that information, and now they've made it more difficult to extract that information. So they're not allowing you to manipulate their rules, and then they're doing a much more conscious, intentional job of manipulating coverage rules and pass protection rules on 3rd down and snapping them. So if you're making it harder on the offenses by what you're doing, and you're making it easier on yourself by not putting yourself in bad situations, that's kind of the point that we've reached with the interplay between offenses and defenses in the NFL right now. And I think you're seeing kind of the downstream effects. It's not just young quarterbacks. It's not just offensive line. It's being outmatched by defensive lines. I think that's absolutely part of it. But for right now, I think we've just reached a point where defense coaching has caught up with offensive coaching, and the playing field has been leveled compared to where it was 4 or 5 years ago.
No, that's such a great point. That's just a youth movement. It's one of those.
That's exactly right.
everybody used to be so guarded with their stuff. It's, oh my God, now if you go on football Twitter, it's like everybody's got everyone's playbooks, which is like hilarious to me, and which is kind of how it always was. Everybody had their own stuff, but no one wanted to admit it. And now it's just whatever. I mean, you could say outside zone, and you got 20 people replying to me going, well, Shanahan calls that Zorro. It's like, I know, guys, I know that's just one offense. There's like 20 out there. There's 100 out there. But it's no, the point about the protection rules is so huge. And you see so many running backs in this league have no idea what to do in protection and are just guessing. That's always how young running backs are, but it's now getting to the point where it's like vets are just guessing. They're just going, I think I blocked this guy here. And that's because they aren't sure if the offensive line has it. It's such an advantage, Tony. Like, this is, and not to just say like simulated pressures is what's winning, but it is because it's a twofold thing.
Which we said was going to happen. Coming into the season, we said this was going to happen. However, it ended up looking, what kind of simulated pressures and who was running them. But that general idea, I think, is a huge reason why this gap has closed. And we saw this coming.
Yep. One of the best things the Bills have done this year, I mean, credit Ken Dorsey for a lot of things, but one of the best things they've done is they've cleaned up their simulated pressure rules and getting the back out and just blocking it up, and then also having a super weapon at quarterback who's able, if you don't block it up, he can just make a guy miss. That also helps. But they have cleaned that up so they're not getting gamed out of stuff. And that's what I feel like a lot of offenses are just getting gamed out of things. Or when that 7-man protection I brought up with the Bills that they ran, the Broncos will run this as well on third down. But the Broncos seem to run it when they are just rushing 3 or 4. So now you're wasting 2 guys chipping, and then they're only releasing into the flat. It's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing. And only rushing 4, and it keeps the running back in it's so hard for offenses to attack you, because you have to be willing to have a 3-man route down the field that can actually gash you. When you're running a typical 6-man protection, so you got 1 guy in protection and then 4 guys running deeper routes, usually it's only 1 route that's deeper. The rest is the horizontal stretch. So the Rams figured out a way to answer this last year by doing the empty and having the guys chip. But you also have Stafford willing to hang in that pocket and find a deep dig and find these routes down the field. It's just they have to unbreak their own line of thinking, because you have the running back, if he gets caught up, if he's guessing wrong, or if the point's wrong and he has to block some linebacker that comes down to shoot with the Broncos. So the running back has to stay in. Now we only have 4 guys against 7 pass defenders. That's hard. That's really hard to find a guy. The rules were always the running back stays in protection. That means they're down 1 in pass coverage, that they only have 6 back there. So we can find a gap, and we can find that gash if we wad this up. They're kind of taking that away now. Now they're saying, okay, if you go 5-man, we have this answer. If you have 7-man, we have to go this answer. So now it's a guessing game for the offenses, which is not the place that they've been in the last few years.
The point thing is a really good example as well, because there was a time where you look at what the Vikings were doing, and the Vikings did this really smart thing where they would be in those double mug A gap looks.
Yeah.
And based on where the center pointed, that's how they would blitz. They would blitz away from the point and away from the direction. Now, a ton of people do that. And so now you have offensive coaches that have to be like, okay, if they're in that look and our center is going to point, and that's the direction he's going to go, or that's who he's responsible for, and they know that, and they're tweaking how they bring pressure based on what that point is, then we have to give fake points in order to play with what they think we're going to do in protection.
Now imagine if you're on the road and it's 4th quarter, 3rd and 8, and it's just, you can't hear
the
a noise.
Layers of that didn't exist 5 years ago.
Nope.
That wasn't happening. And
Nope.
now these are the considerations that offensive coaches have to go into. Offensive coaches always on the attack 5 or 6 years ago. Always. They always had the way, like we've said, to hold the pen last and to make a defense wrong by this way or this way. Now, all of the things they have to shuffle through as they make these decisions, those considerations and the list of shit you have to check off as you're figuring out, how do I get into a good play? That list is so much longer than it was 3 or 4 years ago. And this is what I heard this week. This isn't just like me looking at some numbers and saying this. These are offensive coaches of good offenses in the NFL being like, no, this is real. Like all of these things and all of these easy buttons we used to have, we don't have nearly as many of them anymore. And that's what you're seeing. This is the final result of that.
Yes. And that's and Shanahan offenses have so many qualities to it one of the things is they have nothing on the quarterback. They say we're putting it all in the center. But if you have 80% of centers just going, I point and that's it. And no one can reset it. And now we've taught all these quarterbacks and all these offenses, hey, don't worry about it. We'll block it up, or you throw hot. Now you're getting gamed out of it. And it's like, this is what happens. It's you saw the root cause of it. And I'm not saying that it's like, oh my God, the Shanahan offenses were wrong or anything like that. That was just the rules. And when that's the majority of the league now defenses have those answers. That's why you watch some of these other teams, and I would even, I know we're going to talk about it, but I'll even bring up the Cowboys. And now that Dak's coming back, this is actually playing into a guy like Dak's hands that is willing to sit back there and go, okay, no, we're making the mic 42 here. Okay, let's reset it. Everyone ready. Yes, it winds down the clock, and sometimes you get out of a rhythm. Mahomes does this, though. Mahomes repoints. Herbert repointed on Monday night, but it was only one time. And that's because they kind of have taken up that pen. They don't really he does it, but he doesn't do it. It's kind of, I've been still trying to figure out their operation.
Saw Lindsley not being there on Monday night. You saw how important that was. And it's funny because the Shanahan offense was designed to homogenize quarterback play.
Yes.
That's what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to lift the floor of the middle class of quarterbacks. That's exactly right. Yep. So you're creating this mechanism that more quarterbacks can run efficiently.
Yes.
Well, if that's what you're doing, the rigidity of that, when the mechanism starts to break down, you're in real trouble.
Yes.
And that's what we're seeing right now is the mechanism is starting to break down. So if you have a quarterback that allows you to step beyond that rigid mechanism, whether it's because he's a playmaking quarterback, he can do stuff off schedule, he can make people miss in the pocket, or he has the ability to be flexible in the ways that you're setting or handling protections, you get an inherent advantage here. This brings me to what's going on with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay right now.
Yeah.
Their offense is that rigid structure to it compared to what he was used to when he was playing under McCarthy. And for a while, it was fine. And now that the mechanism and the ways that they manipulate defenses have started to lose some of their efficiency, he wants the control back because he's realizing where some of the shortcomings are. And I think that's what's happening right now.
I know that it was one of those, because I've been laughing at it that hey, he won 2 MVPs by giving into let's motion and game this up. And then now I'm like, maybe he's kind of right though. It just
I understand both sides of the argument
too,
because there is a tension that exists right now.
And that's why their offense has been so good, is because it was this, we call it the greatest hits offense, because it was not all the way Shanahan. I mean, I would say you could see some fingerprints, but that offense was, oh my God, they're running duo like they were the Cowboys and the Bucks, like an Arians offense. They were running 7-step concepts, like old school 7-step stuff. And it was just this smorgasbord that was awesome. But now they basically just, okay, we're going to take away the easy card. That's what defenses did. We're going to take that away from you. So now you have to do all the hard stuff again. And now you have to retrain themselves and rewire themselves.
We got a voicemail from a listener, and I can't remember his name, and I apologize about that. He said, how should we enjoy these games? These mucked up games are a little bit ugly, like that game on Monday night. Watch what the Broncos are doing up front. Watch all of the ways that they're consciously fucking with the offenses that they're playing against and how they're unleashing some of these dudes. That's how you can get the most out of this. Some of these teams, the Eagles aren't blitzing a ton. The Eagles are one of the most efficient, if not the most efficient, blitzing teams in the league. They think they have the highest EPA per dropback when they do blitz.
Yeah.
Look at what they're doing in some of these pressure packages. Jonathan Gannon is one of these young, curious defensive coordinators that has sought out some of these ideas. It kind of is like what we're talking about with the Brian Dabolls and the Eagles offensive coaching staff for how they've built around their players. And there is a flexibility to their thinking process here. I think you're seeing that with some of these defensive coaches who are a little bit younger, who come from generally the same tree, but I think are actively seeking out new ideas. So the same way we're appreciating it on offense, we can appreciate it on defense. Maybe there's fewer points and it's a little bit uglier to the layman who's watching this. And even to me, it can be at times, but I think there are still details about this that are worth embracing, because you're just seeing really, really good work, but you're seeing it on the defensive side of the ball.
Right. And it makes you appreciate the really good offenses. Just like when the offenses were so extraordinary these last few years, the good defenses were really fun to watch, because you're like, wow, how are they stopping these fire-powered units? And now it's the flip side. It's, That's why you appreciate what the Bills and the Chiefs do with Mahomes and Allen, because you're like, oh my God, this is awesome. Even what the Dolphins have done with Tua, you kind of appreciate. You're like, man, what this offense is doing. They're finding ways to get answers. It's just that's how it went. It's also not only just the young play callers, also like, I love how you said just being adaptable to their players. We got, just because body types have gotten a little leaner and faster, speed, they've realized, hey, tweeners are not a bad thing. You got so many of these outside linebacker types, and kind of like everybody's samey now. And I've compared it before to like a bunch of, wings and defense, like, what the Warriors leaned into for a few years. But it's just having all these guys that are same types of body types. Well, now those guys can all drop. Those guys can all pass rush. And even if they're not dominant at it, they can do it well enough. And the same with the DBs. We've talked about the star position can be safeties now because they have to fit the run. It's an understanding of, hey, these guys have strengths too, which is let them lean into their strengths. We're not going to have some 235-pound linebacker fit up on a fullback over and over. Like, now he can just be, sometimes he's dropping into coverage, sometimes he's blitzing down the A gap. And it's just these kind of tweener types have actually unlocked a lot of things for these defenses.
Baron Browning is a great example, right? Like, bring it back to the Broncos, like what he is, and he was off a linebacker, and now he's rushing the passer. Chubb can do a lot of different stuff. I want to name a couple of these guys that we're talking about. Giro Evero is the Broncos defensive coordinator. Giro, I think, is in his early 40s, I would assume. He's, again, if we're talking about younger coaches around the league, he's 41 years old. Shane Bowen is 35. He's a defensive coordinator for the Titans. The Titans are struggling to figure out what they look like on the back end. The bones of the Titans defense is a lot of the stuff we're talking about right now. And I think they've been able to sustain more than you'd probably think, given some of the rotating door issues they've had at corner, especially this year. Obviously, Brandon Staley is, I think the Broncos defense has been pretty good, all things considered. They're middle of the pack, not maybe as good as we thought, but I think a lot of the ideas are interesting. So these are the guys that we're kind of talking about. Jonathan Gannon again, but it's funny that there are some of these old guard guys that, like, Leslie Frazier deserves a ton of credit for what the Bills look like. Leslie Frazier remains one of the best defensive coaches in the NFL. And then the other guy,
that game plan against the Chiefs should be framed.
It's incredible.
Just all those different looks, they unscouted looks in the middle of a season. It was awesome. It was like a playoff performance. And
then the two other guys older guys that I think worth mentioning. Lou Anarumo is 56, but I think his background and some of the places he comes from, and the fact that he's willing to kind of incorporate some of these different sorts of ideas. And the other guy is Dan Quinn. Like, Dan Quinn to me is the epitome of this idea that we're talking about here. What Dan Quinn was and where he comes from, and the rigidity and being able to put those ideas in a box, and what he is now, his personal evolution and improvement mirrors the evolution and improvement that has allowed this to happen on the defensive side of the ball. If you watch what Dan Quinn is right now and what Dan Quinn was 5 years ago, that can help you understand why the gap between where offenses were 5 years ago and where they are now has closed with where defenses are.
Yes, he is the perfect example, because he was cover 3, cover 1, Seattle defense, match all the way. We'll rush with 4. We never blitz. And when we do blitz, it's 2 times a game. Kind of what Gus Bradley is a little bit. Like, that's kind of how Dan Quinn was. But now the fact that, this is man and cover 2, and he just mixes it all together with funky look. Not just say funky looks, but enough. We talk about window dressing for an offense. He window dresses his defense.
It's exactly right. And more teams are. More teams are doing that. And that is, and now that more teams are consciously and intentionally doing that, that's why you're seeing the landscape that you see right now. All right. That was very fun. I'm glad that we did that.
That was fun.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get back with kind of half of a game of the week. Whether you're looking to pop the question, have a milestone to celebrate, or want to let your love sparkle, Blue Nile can help you make your celebrations even more memorable. As the original online jeweler, Blue Nile offers the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers. They've helped millions of couples create their perfect engagement ring, and their easy online tools let you choose the diamond, size, and clarity as well as a setting. Looking for a piece of fine jewelry to commemorate a special milestone but still have trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moment sparkle with Blue Nile. Go to BlueNile.com and use code MAZE to save $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's BLUENILE.com, code MAYS, to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com/maze. Reserve Bar is your online source for premium and luxury spirits, wine, and champagne. And now, Reserve Bar offers same-day delivery. Reserve Bar has a vast lineup of rare and hard-to-find bottles, premium brands, celebrity spirits, and limited releases that you just won't find at your local store. No one does spirits gifting better than Reserve Bar. Looking for an elevated gift? ReserveBar.com has you covered, and you can have that gift delivered right to your door. The hot trend in spirits is ready-to-go cocktails. Have you tried these? They taste better than ever, and Reserve Bar now has a huge collection of them. These canned cocktails are great for parties when you don't have time to tend the bar, and ideal for tailgating season, which is already in full swing. Visit ReserveBar.com today and use promo code MAZE to save $10 off your purchase of $75 or more on spirits, wine, or pre-made cocktails, but only when you use our special offer at ReserveBar.com with code MAZE. That's ReserveBar.com, code MAYS. This offer expires December 31st, 2022.
Time to play the game!
Oh, that's all for you, buddy. That's all for you.
Bauer's been waiting for that one too. He on the Sunday show, he actually chimed in with it, so I'm ready. No, that's a good way to get going.
It's not a great slate of games this week, guys. All right, you look at it, it's just really not. But the best potential matchup in our minds is the Chiefs offense playing against the Niners defense on Sunday. This is all contingent, obviously, on who's playing for the San Francisco 49ers. Yes. The list here is insane. So the guys who missed last week, Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Trent Williams, Jimmy Ward, Hufanga left early with a concussion, McGlinchey left early with a calf injury, Tarvarius Ward left early with a groin injury. So where we sit now, Bosa, Trent Williams, Jimmy Ward, all were limited in practice. Okay. It sounds like they are all going to play. Okay. Ward has a cast on his hand, but it sounds like he may be able to be back, which is great news. Not practicing right now, Hufanga, Armstead, McGlinchey, Ebukam. I always say Ebukam. Samson Ebukam. I know his name.
Me for pronunciation.
This is one time where you get me. So I pray that we get a lot of these guys. And Ward, I think, probably is the biggest question. I mean, he hurt his groin a week ago, so he may need a little bit of time. But it does sound like Jason Verrett might be back. So that could be huge. I don't know how long Jason Verrett will last. I hope it's for a while, but at least he might be healthy on Sunday. So if we get that full slate or close to a full slate of San Francisco 49ers defenders, what is the thing you are watching for most in this matchup between a Niners defense that we love and a Chiefs offense that is obviously a pain in the ass to deal with?
Right. It just like last week with the Bills defense, is the 49ers they like to do what they do. We run this, we run it well, you have to beat us. That's when they're full strength, of course. But even last week against the Falcons, they kind of were leaned into that. Falcons are just such one of those unique teams I'm sure like the Chiefs watching that film are like, we can't do this. We're not going to run a fullback on the field 20% of the time. Like we can't use this. But I think that what I want to see is just how the Bills, like when we preview that game, is do they adapt what they run to throw different looks at Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? I think over time, Mahomes will get a beat on what you're running. I think this Raiders game 2 weeks ago was a great example of that, where you could feel him kind of, gauging and engaging and going, oh, you're running man coverage every third down. Gotcha. And then just destroying him the rest of the game. And I think last week with the Bills, and that's why I said what Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott did on that defense was showing these unscouted looks and varying up what they run. That was the most they've run man. They ran a ton of cover two. They tripled their man rate, their season rate to what they ran last week. So I'm wondering if the 49ers do the same. They don't run a lot of cover two. One of the bottom teams running cover two. They're about league average in man coverage. So what are they going to lean into against this Chiefs offense that kind of, what's coming. You know what they're going to lean into as far as, well, they kind of run everything, but what they're going to lean into against you. So I want to see who blinks. And I also want to see if, say, the 49ers do decide it is a man coverage game, even with their banged up DBs, are the Chiefs going to start leaning into Sky Moore a little bit more man beaters? They signed Juju Smith-Schuster to beat zone coverages. So now who, outside of Kelsey, of course there's Kelsey, but what do they lean into if there's another defense that starts going, we're going to run more man and see if you can beat us over and over and over?
And that's what you've seen as the blueprint against the Chiefs this year. The Chiefs have been one of the most efficient offenses in the league. It's not an overly efficient and overly effective blueprint, but you're seeing teams go to this. And we'll contrast this with the conversation we're going to have about the Dolphins later. This is a direct response to Tyreek Hill not being or not being on a team.
Yep.
Boom. That's all. That's it.
That's it.
The Chiefs faced very low man coverage rates when Tyreek Hill was there. This year, they have faced the highest man coverage rate in the NFL.
Yep.
So you look at what the Bills did. You mentioned it. Weeks 1 through 5, Bills ran 14.3% man coverage, 30th in the NFL. Last week, 45% against the Chiefs. They tripled it.
Wow.
The team just ahead of Buffalo in man coverage rates over weeks 1 through 5, 29th, the San Francisco 49ers.
Yes.
So do the Niners embrace this in the way that the Bills did? Do the Niners, with these defensive back injuries that they're dealing with, feel comfortable embracing a changing game plan, these one-on-one matchups? We talked about this a little bit earlier today, and I think this is a conversation to monitor over the next 2 or 3 months. All the OBJ Chiefs things that have popped up. When I was hearing about it, I was like, really? Like they need Odell Beckham? Like they're one of the best passing offenses in the league. But I think you're seeing all the man coverage that they're facing, how much those receivers are getting challenged. When we get into the playoffs and the tight window throws start to become more and more important, and you are really forcing people to make those contested catches in those situations by playing so much man, are these receivers going to be able to show up? Right. Are these receivers going to be able to make plays in those moments? And I think that's why the OBJ thing could be almost a direct response to the way that teams are playing against the Chiefs so far. So if the Niners twist their game plan to match what other teams have done, and it continues to be relatively successful compared to what just sitting in zone coverage against Travis Kelce looks like, do we see more of that for the rest of the year? And what does it ultimately mean for how the Chiefs are constructed and what their ceiling is as we move through the playoffs?
Yeah, Kelce is, incredible against like most man coverages, and he's good against, but he also is,
but he's getting doubled all the time now.
Exactly.
If you're playing double on third down and you're doubling Kelce and everyone else is one-on-one, who else can beat you? And I think that's the challenge that has been lofted at the Chiefs here.
Yep, because MVS isn't beating it, and that was why he was signed. And then same with Juju, like I mentioned before, he was designed to sit in the middle of zone coverages and get the ball pinned on his chest. That is why he was there. It's a big body, and he can get north and get you a few yards after the catch. That's where I think that OBJ stuff, there's smoke, there's fire, because that is the guy that seems like he's taking recruiting visits everywhere. Like
enjoy it.
He's loving it. He's loving it. That he got his ring and he's like, yeah, this is great. But that's where those guys come in. It's just like, I know I make these comparisons all the time, but it is like an NBA defense. Like during the regular season is one thing, but you get into the playoffs and these defenses have all your tendencies and they know how to lock you down. You need guys that can just win. I say go get a bucket.
You can be hyper specific in the game plans.
Yep.
That
every third 7 to 10, we're doing this. 3rd and 5, we're doing
designer
this.
Bullshit. It's what the Bengals did to the Chiefs last playoffs. When you can come out and just do this stuff that is tailored to one team based on who they are, can you move outside of that as an offense? And I think having more receiving options allows you to potentially do that.
Yeah,
I want to ask you this.
That's why I've always credited Spagnuolo, is because I've said that he's one of the best 1 week game plan designers. But it's kind of interesting that other coaches are going like, "Hey, we got to lean into it," and that it's complimented their coaching. It really that's like some good. Like we said, this is a theme of this pod. Some good defensive coaching is going on in the NFL right now.
This is anecdotal, but we talked about how, with stunts and twists in games, defensive lines and defensive coaches have done a really good job of getting after non-cohesive offensive lines, breaking coverage or protection rules. Watching the game back last week with the Chiefs against the Bills, feels like the Bills didn't use a ton of stunts, a ton of games, because they don't want Mahomes to be able to spill outside of the pocket.
Right.
So does the Niners pass rush get defanged a little bit if they can't do some of that stuff that we're used to because they want to push the pocket and keep him in? And all the drop 8 stuff with the spy. You mean the first drive, they weren't doing it. And on that 4th and 2, he scrambles for a first down. And you can tell the Bills like, that's not fucking happening again.
Yeah, they're right. Okay.
We're just not. That
they broke the glass. They're like, okay, here we go. Let's
we're
get
not doing this. We're not letting him beat us with his legs.
Yep.
And that's what they went to pretty much from the rest of the game on. And then last year, we talked about this coming into the game. He crushed them on scrambles last year.
Yep.
So if you're going to play more man coverage, it makes you more susceptible to him potentially extending plays or getting outside the pocket or scrambling on 3rd down. So what is your solution for that? Are you making sure that you're pushing the pocket and guys are mush rushing a little bit? Are you spying him? What does that plan look like? So the Niners, a team that all the twists and games and just ear holing you want to see on third down, do they lean away from that a little bit because of what Patrick Mahomes can do to you in those situations?
I don't think they will, because I think the 49ers defensive, and I have no idea. This is by really, they have that philosophy of we're going to, fuck you up like that. That's kind of what they do. They say, we're going to get to you. Sorry. I had a point of emphasis.
It's true.
It is. That's their philosophy. They're going to pin their ears back and go. But that's such a great point. And that's where, and coaching and emphasis throughout the week has to happen, because when you run those games, and Bosa is so good at them, is when he knifes inside and he takes two with him, the guy that's looping around him has to be the one that's has the most rules contained. Like, he has to know, I'm contained here. I can't get, antsy here and go, oh my God, there he is. I'm going to go sack him right here. And it's like, no. You got to keep your contained. You got to loop around. So it's a point of emphasis. I think they still do it because that's just their identity and it's their DNA. But I think it's just, they have to emphasize the points. And that's where that 3-2-6 stuff that the Bills are running, that dime defense with the mirror with Milano reading the stuff, is why that was baiting him. It wasn't that last year in that Bengals playoff game, the Bengals were running a lot of 2-man, which is baiting a quarterback into scrambling, because you're going, oh man, I could scramble here. All their backs are turned. And then now you got a post-snap contain guy basically who's reading it out. What the Bills did so great last week is they ran like 4 different coverages with that dime look. It was just Tampa 2. It was one robber. It was one hole. It was 2-man. So they didn't let Mahomes get a beat on it. So, but again, that's why that freaking game plan should be framed in Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott's office, because it was so good. But the 49ers, though, are more of a team that they truly are like, no, this is what we do, and we're going to beat you doing it. So I don't know. I also thought the Bills would do that too and say, this is what we do. You got to beat us. So who knows? That was a long answer to say, I don't know, Robert.
One robber is where the other safety is walking down and being a robber in the middle of the field. One hole, a linebacker, is that second zone player. So just if you're thinking about cover one with a guy in the post, where is that other zone defender who's not responsible for someone? Is he a little bit higher, or is he right there in the middle of the field? So just little tiny jargony stuff there. All right. That's all we got. There are no more games for us to talk about. We'll dig into some of these other things, but the next thing we wanted to talk about here is kind of in relation to some of the ugliness that we've seen so far this season.
We're still cool, man. We're still cool.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
I didn't know we were just going to roll that back from the Sunday show. That's totally fine.
That. I was going to say a Thursday edition. I love that.
We have a Sunday segment where we talk about some of the things that disappointed us over the course of that week. We're going to talk about some of the things that have disappointed us over the course of this season. Some of the units or players that we had high hopes for that haven't necessarily lived up to those high hopes. And I want to start with the Cleveland Browns defense, a team that I was pretty excited about heading into the year. I thought that all of the talent that they had on the back end, the back seven especially, combined with the pass rush that they could generate. I was always worried about the run defense. Me and Deontay talked about that coming into the season. Could they defend the run well enough to make their back seven matter? And what's been frustrating is their back seven hasn't played that well. The run defense has been atrocious, but overall the defense has been bad. Right now, through 6 weeks, the Cleveland Browns are 31st in EPA per play on defense. And even with their spending isn't that high on that side of the ball, a lot of rookie contracts, which is part of it. And even with some of the concerns about the interior of their defensive line and their run defense, I still thought they'd be so much better against the pass than they've been. 24th in EPA per dropback against the pass. So the Cleveland Browns, you are headlining my all disappointment team coming into week 7 here.
Oh man. And even, I know we're talking about the pass defense right now, but that run defense, man. Like, so I was looking at True Media. I shared a True Media stat with somebody and they're like, well, isn't negative EPA, it's flipped, or that means they're actually doing well. And
That's
I was like, well, no,
DVOA.
Yeah. And I was like, no, it's defensive EPA. And like, that was my way to confirm that I was correct, was I looked at who had the worst rush defenses. And when I saw that the Browns were last, I was like, okay, I'm good.
There
here.
it is.
Like, I'm reading the stat right. Negative 1.19 EPA per rush. When 31st is the Lions at 0.12. The league average right now is 0.04. So they are way down there. And
running the ball should not be that efficient.
It should
Running
not.
the ball is an inefficient practice, except if you're playing the Cleveland Browns right now.
that's like I mean, put in perspective, like I think Allen and Mahomes are like 0.3 and 0.29 EPA per dropback. So you're like a very good quarterback every time you run the ball against this Browns
Correct.
defense.
Yes.
That's what's going on right now. I mean, and really it's not just their personnel. They have light bodies up the middle, their defensive tackles, but also their linebackers. That is the give and take of a guy like JOK. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his whole name, but JOK, number 28, the linebacker from Notre Dame, who's kind of a hybrid type player, is they're saying, hey, if we're going to play all these teams out, pass the ball. Passing is what the league is going to. We're going to defend the pass. Yes, they have issues in that, but teams don't have to pass if they can run the ball like this. And there's one play against the Chargers. And when I'm complimenting the Chargers run game, it's an issue for your run defense. And a play that happened, it was a duo play, which is an at-you run. And when the Chargers did a nice job, they window dressed it. So they had a jet sweep with it. When they had the jet sweep with it, JOK walks down to the outside. So I'm talking about light bodies, but I'm also going to talk about busts. And that's what's happening with this defense. JOK walks on the outside. Everybody, and a defense has to be gap sound. You have to have a body per gap. That is, otherwise you'll just get gashed. Clowney rushes outside and JOK rushes outside. There is nobody in the B gap. And then Austin Eckler almost runs it all the way down for a touchdown. It's like an 80-yard gain, 70-something yard gain, gets tackled at like the 1 or 2 yard line. And right then and there is exactly their issues. You can be light in the pants and not have like a big, wreck you type of defense. And we're just going to win with speed and running after, rallying tackle. But your rules have to be freaking right. They have to be good. You can't have that. If you're not going to be a defense that can hold up and take 2 blocks and we're going to knife through the gaps, well, you better have a body in every gap. And that was just one little play, just one example of what's kind of going on with this defense. And on top of it, they're very predictable. They have the same front. They run an over front, which is a 3 technique, a defensive tackle towards the tight end side. And the nose tackle is in a 2-eye on the weak side. That is just an over front. They run it every single time. And why that's an issue is when they're not in it, alarm bells for the offense. Oh, you're in an underfront? Oh, here comes a blitz. Like you kind of just know when they're going to get into stuff. And when you don't have a badass talented unit, we thought Browns do have some guys, but it's when you don't have that all 3 levels, issues start to come up. So you better be sound. If you're going to be predictable on defense, you better have some dudes. And really that's where all the issues are coming up one after another.
So such a great point with the front, because when you watch them, they look weird.
Yeah.
Compared to what you see from most NFL defenses now and how hard it is to figure out, all right, even if you're lined up in this 4-down front, where are these guys going to end up after the ball snapped, even if it's a run play? The Browns are an exception to that. And you mentioned 2 guys being in the same gap and being unsound. The Ramondre Stevenson touchdown last week.
Yes.
It's a 3rd and 10 give-up handoff. Delpit flies into the C gap along with where the defensive end is, and he just bounces it through the B gap for a 31-yard touchdown on 3rd and 10 with 2 guys mugged up. So that was another good example of that. So the thing that's most troubling about their run defense, this was shocking to me. They are 28th in the NFL in the percentage of their early down snaps where they have 6 or fewer guys in the box. They are playing with some of the heaviest boxes in the NFL, and they're 28th in run defense success rate. They're 33% of their early down snaps. They have 6 or fewer guys in the box. Teams at the top of the NFL, 60%, 55%. And those teams are better right now at defending the run than the Browns are using those looks on half the time. And the problem is when you're having to defend the run like that, they're getting gashed in heavy personnel play action. They are 29th in the league in EPA per dropback against 12 and 21 personnel. I tweeted out this play from the Patriots game. Patriots are in 12. They run max protection, right? Just 8-man protection. Bailey Zappi can build a house back there. It was insane.
I saw somebody tweet. Yeah, I think it was you tweeting it because the pocket was like
this is huge. I deleted the tweet.
Yeah.
I deleted the tweet because people were just like, no, because I thought people were like, well, of course it's 8-on-5. It's like, it's more just that it's funny that he has all that space. Like everyone shut up.
It's huge.
But anyway, it was ridiculous. But if you're 8-on-5, the whole point is that you should have more bodies in coverage.
Right.
They're running just a simple go over. No. And Jacoby Myers is wide open on the over because John Johnson is the post safety for whatever reason is bailing out of there.
That's
And you watch this stuff and it's like, what is happening? And they're in the linebackers and the way they react to play action. Everything is just so easy. And there was another one in that Patriots game where, again, heavy protection, heavy personnel, and they do the counter to this play where Myers starts running the over and just snaps it back. And Greg Newsome was the cover 3 corner there, and he's just completely ill-equipped to deal with it. They're on against heavy personnel looks this season. They are 72% cover 3 and cover 1. 72%. So if you line up, and that's not abnormal, but if you play that way, you have to be really, really good if you're going to be that predictable.
Yes.
And they're just not. So they're predictable. They're not playing very well, and their personnel isn't equipped to stop the run, and they're not technically sound enough to stop the run.
But other than that, it's
rough.
Okay.
And I know Ward didn't play last week, but
there's underlying issues where it's like,
yes,
the guys, when you just see misalignments it happens. Like defenses botch all the time. It just happens. But when it's like, we just provided 2 examples, and me and you weren't even like, it wasn't an extensive study. It's like it's just a couple days studying, and we found all these. I mean, there's numerous other examples, but the passing game stuff happens all the time. Like, I mean, just in the red zone, you could see they just have so many issues passing stuff off. So it just is a communication issue that they're having, and like you said, they're not playing the personnel that. I mean, their personnel doesn't really help them to like overcome their issues with this communication and scheme.
It's really sad to watch. Really sad is probably overstating it. It's a bummer to watch. They were excited about Delpit coming into the year, like really excited about him. They thought he had made the most strides of anybody in their defensive backfield. And you watch him in that game, and he made a ton of mistakes. And he even said as much after the game. I think he called John Johnson. Was like, "It's the worst game I've ever played in my life." And they're becoming one of these little ecosystems where you're not maximizing the defensive talent that you have. JOK has regressed.
Yeah.
Like, he is worse this year than he was.
He had so many flashes last year.
His
like,
rookie year.
He's going to figure this shit out. He's going to be a good player.
And John Johnson's the same way. John Johnson's just not playing well. I mean, he was so good for the Rams, and he comes over and he just has not been good for Cleveland in his time there. So they are definitely near the top of that list for me. Yeah. Speaking of LA living defensive backs, look at that transition.
Oh man, you're the best.
Speaking of defensive backs who resided in Los Angeles and play at SoFi Stadium, or at least once did. God, well, I am horrible at this. JC Jackson, also on my most disappointed list. And I want to talk about JC Jackson kind of as a way to talk about the Chargers as a whole. When we, once again, did our annual thing about why we were excited about the Chargers, the personnel that they added on defense was a huge reason for that excitement, right?
Yep.
You go out and get JC Jackson, you go out and get Khalil Mack. The offense was a top 5 offense by DVOA last year. Even if they did the same nonsense, they'd probably be top 8 because Justin Herbert was there. And they still probably will be at the end of this. They still probably will be. We can talk about that in a second. But the defense, JC Jackson got benched on Monday night. JC Jackson got more guaranteed money than anyone else in free agency except Von Miller. He got benched on Monday night for Michael Davis. And you watch it, and I totally understand why they did it.
Yeah.
On the first drive, he gets called for PI against Cortland Sutton. I think the second drive is where Dulcich scores that touchdown. Mm-hmm. It's just a simple switch release.
That's it.
It's Hamler running straight at the post safety. Jackson stays with him, and Dulcich just runs right up the sideline. It's like, ooh, that's not complicated, and that's a concern. And then the big play he gave up to Hamler, Stephen Ruiz tweeted it out today, and Deontay was talking about it too. I don't know what he's doing. He's in quarters, but he just is flat-footed as Hamler's running at him, and he just runs right by him. Right now, it just looks like his confidence is absolutely shot. Yeah. But this is where disappointment arises. When you have a disconnect between how you've spent resources and how you've planned and what the performance looks like, that's when you're disappointing. The Browns have Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome drafted in the first round, Greedy Williams drafted in the second round, Grant Delpit drafted in the second round, John Johnson getting a huge contract. Mm-hmm. That's the root of the disappointment. The root of the disappointment with the Chargers is they spent on J.C. Jackson in order to be more flexible on the back end, and they have not gotten that because J.C. Jackson has not been very good.
That's the scary part when you get one of those Patriots DBs, because
there it is.
That's what it is. It's this. Those are the reasons. Those examples you provided. The Patriots run one double, which is man coverage. They double the number one receiver or tight end, depending on who it is. And then J.C. Jackson, their best corner, just lines up a man coverage against the number 2 option. And so he kind of gets a little advantage. I love the math that they do with that. But their rules and what they emphasize, they run other stuff. Don't get me wrong. But that's what they
not a ton.
Not a ton.
Not a ton.
It's their bread and butter. And why that is simple for a guy like J.C. Jackson, what they're teaching is just formation rules. Okay, if they're 3-by-1, we map it out like this. If it's 2-by-2, we map it out like this. That's all he has to learn. Now he gets in these zone match coverages that like Staley runs with the Chargers, and he's never done it. He's never had to worry about first to the flat. He's never had to worry about, okay, man everywhere he goes. Like he now has stuff to think about. The easiest coverage you can teach someone is man coverage, because you just go, guard that dude. I got number 12 this entire game. I got number 11 this entire game. I got Devontae Adams this entire game. And now he has to go, okay, they're in 1-by-3. Okay, now what is it, mod? It's mag. Okay, which man everywhere goes. Or if it's 5 yards and under, do I pass that off?
Those are just variations of match coverage.
Sorry. Yes, I shouldn't even talk about that. But now he actually has to think, and thinking makes players play slower. And he's coming from the most complete opposite, the furthest away type of defense possible what the Patriots run. And that's the scary part, is when you pay, it's not just going, oh, it's because Belichick coaches him up. It's just the scheme that he's been running in. Now he has to worry about guys going at 5 yards. Now he has to worry about locking in. Oh, this guy, they have a switch release, like you said on the Dulcich example. He never had to worry about that, because it was just, I just guard this guy and I walk him down the rest of the way. And that's the scary part. I know it's J.C. Jackson, the defense. And then the other thing is too, is like, you don't pay Mike Williams $20 million to get washed out of games. And that's the scary part, is when you're these big money guys. This is the same discussion we had with the Colts offensive line. When your big money guys are not even good, they're not even average, they're below average. That is the disappointment. You're expecting these guys to be what you lean on. So that's the disappointment. And like J.C. Jackson, like you said, it's just that's the small sample of what's going on.
The Chargers have still done some really good stuff on defense. I mean, there's reason I threw out Staley's name
Those
earlier
blitzes.
when we're talking about the blitzes are awesome. Like
Awesome.
their third down pressure packages are awesome. And that's a world that Staley didn't necessarily live in for a while.
He had a cool one where he faked it with James. James came out on the edge, and you can see the Broncos freaking out and pointing towards him, and for one of the few times. And then James was just a flat defender. And I was like, that was awesome. Just because it was just the big brother moment. I'm not hitting you. And then they hit him later with shooting him through the B gap. So sorry, but that was just some good stuff with their blitzes, at least.
No Joey Bosa. J.C. Jackson's not playing very well. They're 13th in dropback EPA. Like their pass defense is still fine. Their run defense is not very good. And that's the concern. Yeah. And so I think that's at the root of it. Do you want to have a 5-minute conversation or a 90-second conversation about how disappointing the Chargers offense is?
I mean, sure. If
we're going to talk about all disappointment, like,
yeah, but it's I came into the season already prepared to be disappointed. Do you have a stat on like how much quick game they run on third down? Like that's...
No, but I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, Justin Herbert is still like bottom 4 in the NFL in air yards per target.
I don't get it.
I mean, it's, and I think that part of it is that they're struggling to protect right now.
Mm-hmm.
You watch that game on Monday night. Again, we mentioned this before. The Broncos defense can muck up a game. They can muck up a game. So when Corey Linsley's not playing, and then at a certain point in the game, you go down to center number 3, that's what you can see. Justin Herbert missed a couple throws. I think that him being hurt still, potentially, he was on the injury report for the first time in a couple weeks with the ribs. I don't know if he's 100%. I don't know if he's really trusting what's in front of him. And he missed a couple throws on Monday. Yeah. But the structural concerns we have about this offense and how often the lack of speed and lack of explosiveness comes up, they are disappointing. Even if by the end of the year they finish 7th in offensive DVOA, which I have every bit of confidence they will, with Linsley not missing a game because of food poisoning for no reason, I think it's going to be fine in the end. The Chargers, I made this joke on Monday night, the watchability index for NFL offenses. The Bills are number 1. The Chiefs are number 2. We know the reasons for that. Other than that, like the Seahawks have been fun watching Geno Smith a little bit. The Giants are weird. I've enjoyed watching that. The Eagles do a lot of really good stuff. The Dolphins, when Tua was playing, were really exciting. The idea that the Los Angeles Chargers with Justin freaking Herbert are not fun is a football crime.
It is. It is. It's just it's so much. They just have a governor on themselves for like, and I get it. Like, okay, like, and that's always the argument. Okay, they got protected up.
Joe Lombardi's the RA. That's what he is.
there's other ways to like get explosive plays other than just these old school like deep drop back stuff. Like it's I don't know. Last year against
who was the fastest player on the Los Angeles Rams last year?
On the Rams?
Yes, in their receiving core for most of the season. Robert Woods.
Van Jefferson was their take the top off guy, but that's not
that's what I'm saying.
4-5 and change
you can
guy.
Create an awesome explosive pass offense without traditionally fast, speedy receivers. It is possible to do.
It is. And it's just I've talked about stick and all that, but it is fascinating. And I wish I could have a number on it. Just every third and short, them running quick game. And even Herbert's interception came on quick game. There was a batted ball in the red zone. It was a third and short. Another quick game play. And you can see defenses going, oh, we know that Herbert's going to plant his foot and get rid of the ball. So they stopped rushing. They're just getting their hands up. Like that's what they're taught to do. And you see that trickle down. And it's a quick game is okay, we're not going to be a great run team. We have Eckler who doesn't have great size. We can't, give him 100 touches. And okay, do we trust our backup running backs? Okay, maybe not. But quick game is a way to replace the run, okay, or complement it. You don't do it on every play. Like you don't do it a dozen times a game. You're supposed to run it like once or twice or three times a game. And the fact that they have this super weapon who is willing to move in the pocket, the fact that he can move away from pressure and keep his eyes downfield, and why those don't have that kind of same excitement other than Herbert throwing these amazing throws is because none of the routes start down the field. The Chiefs and the Bills, they do all this stuff. There's a guy that's already going deep. There's a guy moving the intermediate areas. Herbert starts scrambling around. All the guys are running at 5-6 yard routes. Everything's just tight. Like you can't even get these scramble plays going. I've gone on this rant 100 times, but it is so frustrating to watch that offense just have no new ideas, just very stagnated, very just like, well, this worked in 2004, like type of offense. And the fact that they have a guy that should be breaking the game for them, they just give them no freedom to do that. It's very exhausting. It really is.
I mean, seriously, it's like rolling up with like a keg and like a bucket of fireworks. And Joe Lombardi's just like, now we're good.
I've been saying that he has a Ferrari and he goes 60 and a 65. That is how I describe the Chargers offense. That's what it feels like. You have a Ferrari, but we're going to go 5 under the speed limit every single snap.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's keep getting sad here. Packers defense. Next entry here in the.
There's an easy transition here, man.
General disappointment team.
Sad LA offenses. That's what I thought you were going to go with. But
Packers defense, I feel the exact same way, right? So their Packers defense right now, 23rd in the NFL in EPA per play. There was a world coming into this season where I thought the Packers could have one of the best 5 defenses in the league, right? With the personnel that they had. And it just hasn't happened. They're an actively bad run defense, the same way that they've been for multiple years. They are an actively, I'm wrong stat here. Right now, Packers are 19th in EPA per play on defense. I was looking at offense. They are 30th in rushing EPA per play. This is the same old story with the Packers and their defense. And the amount they spent and the resources that they spent on defense this year, all of the draft picks, picking Wyatt and Walker in the first round and having the window that you have with Rodgers, to justify that plan, you needed to be elite on defense this year.
Yep.
And that just hasn't happened for them.
Yeah. I thought it was their whole philosophy was race to 20. And it's like when you have Rodgers, okay, I get it. But it's funny how their offenses and defenses kind of feel the same in a weird way. It's no explosives. There's no defensive explosives. I think they have 1 interception on the year. And it's funny is they've forced the most 3 and outs in the NFL. They have the fewest amounts of throws of 20 yards or more against them, but they're still middle of the pack with everything. Like you don't feel this defense imposing their will on anything that you thought maybe they will. This is another defense too that has their communication issues. I don't know what the hell's going on with these defenses. So first, the Justin Jefferson game in week 1, Saquon Barkley's big play in London. They just have these botches out of nowhere, and you can't live that way if you're going to be a bend but don't break defense. It's funny, you listen to the EPA, they're DVOA, they're the worst team against the run, which is saying something when you have the Lions and Browns run defenses in the NFL, that you're worse than that. So it's this weird, like, bend but don't break. Actually, the Chargers offense and the Packers defense might be the same discussion. You can run these offenses and defenses if you do create a couple of explosive plays, but you can't make a freaking mistake. That's been one of my frustrations with the Chargers offense, is that they're going to like, well, we'll be efficient. We're going to be just machine on offense. We'll do everything perfect. But then the receivers are running in the same spot. They have guys just doing the wrong thing all the time, missing blocks, not even just losing, but missing them, just not even going to the right guy. Same thing with the Packers defense. If you're going to be this bend but don't break, well, you got to force mistakes. You're creating short fields for your offense because you're saying, yes, we'll get the 3 and out, but that's still a punt. They're just not having those types of big plays. I think they're middle of the pack in knockdown percentage as well. Not even just sacks, but just knockdowns. But yeah, it's a defense wanting explosive plays, just how their offense is, thirsty for explosive plays.
Perfectly illustrated. The Packers are actually 5th in dropback success rate allowed. They're 5th, but they're 10th in dropback EPA. Which is that gap is explained by a lack of explosive game shifting plays. 10th is pretty good. Yeah. Right. Like the pass defense has been fine. They have a lot of good players there. But if the run defense is going to be absolute garbage, the pass defense being 10th leaves you a bottom third of the league defense. And that is where the Packers are right now. And that's not what they were supposed to be.
Especially when you don't have the game scripts you usually did with this Packers offense with Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. Oh, we're up 2 scores the whole game, so they have to pass, so we just could play this soft defense. Now that's all tied games, 1-score games, and offenses just go like the Jets. We're just like, all right, we're just going to keep pounding the rock on you. Like, good luck. Like, but that's the thing. It's always team football, but now you got 2 blahness on offense and defense at Green Bay.
Last one here on the all disappointment team. It pains me to say this, but I think it's Allen Robinson and the Rams offense.
Yeah.
The amount of money that the Rams paid Allen Robinson this year, and that's part of the issue, is that the Rams offense has been bad for a few different reasons. We can get into that. The Rams had some resources this offseason, and the ways that they use their resources have not helped them. Allen Robinson has been almost a non-factor. They gave Joe Noteboom that extension. He's hurt now, but even before he was hurt, he wasn't playing very well.
Yeah.
So the bets they made to kind of sustain their offense through this potentially down year because of the way that they had kind of gone YOLO with team building over the last 3 or 4 years, those bets have not hit. And combined with the offensive line injuries and ineffectiveness, that's what you see. You see the final product from all of that.
You can have, this is just, again, it's team football. You can have skill guys overcome bad offensive line play because they're just so talented. Not only just quarterback, but a receiver or running back, doesn't matter if you miss a block. We're going to create 10 yards on our own. And that's the thing. That's why the Allen Robinson issue, I'll call it an issue, it's just compounded. Like, who else they got? Of course they have Cooper Kupp. But then Tyler Higbee, Tyler Higbee's a screen merchant. Like, he's not like used like a traditional tight. That's what he runs. It's just a bunch of screens to him. And it's funny for me as a neutral fan that is Robinson is locked in for another year. And Robinson looked like crap last year with the Bears. I just thought it was just because of the situation. And now it's like, okay, 2 years ago he was fine though. He was pretty good. He was still Allen Robinson. He didn't give him a different flavor on this offense. And when you don't have other young guys that you can lean on that say, okay, Allen Robinson's been mediocre, but we got this young stud that we drafted in the 2nd round. You look at their skill guys that they drafted in these middle rounds. They're trying to get rid of Cam Akers. They're basically begging on every Twitter account that you see that. It's like Sean McVay going like everybody that he talks to. It's like, hey, yeah, Cam Akers is on the market. Look at him. He's shiny, right? 2nd round pick. Tutu Atwell, which I've made fun of before, has 1 career catch. They're relying on Brandon Powell, who's already set a career high in offensive touches at 27 years old. That's not a good thing. Like that, that he's setting a career high in offensive touches. They're designing plays for him in the backfield. That is not where you want to be with this team. The Deshaun Jackson experiment last year lasted a month. Van Jefferson he's okay, but he was hurt. He's been hurt. All these guys, Darrell Henderson's fine, but they don't have any difference makers. So they have Stafford begging, hoping Cooper Kupp gets open and a bunch of screenplays. They just have no juice on this offense. And that's where the Allen Robinson stuff becomes a compounded issue. And now he's going to be there for another year.
It's easy when teams are successful to look at everything they do and in hindsight be like, oh, they just know better than everybody.
Right.
No one knows better than everybody.
No.
Like Allen Robinson looking the way that he did in Chicago at times last year, and the Rams being like, we understand how to use him. We understand how to fix him. It just hasn't happened that way. Yeah. And, sometimes you start feeling yourself when you have a certain amount of success. And and it's that kind of is what it feels like. Like the Allen Robinson contract feels like kind of a Rams offense, Rams pro personnel department heat check, and it has not worked out. And I think it exposes some other issues that they're dealing with on that side of the ball.
And they did it on defense too with Bobby Wagner, who's been a little better than he was last year. But if you watch Bobby Wagner in 2021, it was like, oh boy, oh man. And then he got paid. And that's, I think it was a little bit of a heat check. I mean, it's like the Josh McDaniels quote when he was the first head coach with the Broncos. He said, I could turn a high school quarterback into an all-pro. It's like, if his name rhymes with Tom Brady, you can maybe do that. But you can maybe do that, but I don't think it worked out for you. But that's the thing. You start feeling yourself. You're like, everything I do touches it. Everything I touch turns into gold. And not so much right now for LA.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and then talk about some of the quarterbacks who are coming back this week. Are you or someone you know suffering from moderate to extensive hair loss? The good news is there is an answer. Almost 42% of men experience moderate to extensive hair loss in their lifetime, but there are options available to help stop balding in its tracks. The sooner a person starts treatment for hair loss, the easier it is to keep the hair they have. Roman offers clinically proven medication to help treat hair loss, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. Roman offers prescription medication and over-the-counter treatments. They also offer specially formulated shampoos and conditioners with ingredients that fortify and moisturize hair to look fuller. Research shows that about 80% of men who use prescription hair loss treatment had no further hair loss after 2 years. Research also shows that men who use hair loss treatments feel better about their overall appearance. Getting started is simple. Complete a free online visit and then a U.S. licensed healthcare professional will work with you to find the best treatment plan. If medication is appropriate, Roman ships it directly to you in discreet packaging with free 2-day shipping. The whole process is straightforward and discreet. Treatments start at $20 per month on a quarterly plan. Right now, Roman has a special offer for our listeners. Use this link to get 20% off your first order. Just go to GetRoman.com/maze today. That's GetRoman.com/MAYS for 20% off. Imagine having an extra day every week, more time to cook healthy meals, work on that novel, or just binge some really good reality TV. I would love some more time to read, just a little bit more personal time during the season. Now, it's all possible with ClickUp, the productivity platform that'll save you 1 day a week on work, guaranteed. ClickUp began with the premise that productivity was broken. There were too many tools to keep track of, too many things, entirely separate ecosystems. There had to be a more productive way. ClickUp is the one tool to house all your tasks, projects, goals, spreadsheets, and more. It's packed with features and customization options. Whether you're in project management, engineering, sales, marketing, or HR, it is the easy solution to create a more efficient work environment. Use code MAZE to get 15% off ClickUp's massive unlimited plan for a year, meaning you can start reclaiming your time for under $5 a month. Sign up today at clickup.com and use code MAZE. Hurry, this offer ends soon. After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and trying out the service, it all makes sense. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those savings directly to you. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate, whether you're buying for one or for a family. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone number along with your existing contacts. To get a new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/maze. That's mintmobile.com/MAYS. Cut your wireless plan to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/maze.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
All right. Tua Tagovailoa and Dak Prescott are back this week just in time for, I think, both of their offenses. The Dolphins have been struggling without Tua in the lineup for multiple reasons, which we'll get into. Obviously, Cooper Rush turned back into a pumpkin last Sunday night against the Eagles. I just want to point out like one or two things or ask you one or two things you're watching from both of these offenses as we get those guys back. Let's start with the Dolphins. What do you need to see or what do you want to see with Tua back in the lineup for Miami?
Well, It's nice their running back's got a little more juice with Raheem Mostert. Like having him come back, Mostert. Oh my God, Nate! But it just but having him come back is really helped out their run game by which they needed. But I just want to see him just get back on what they were doing the first couple of weeks and having him just do what he does, how they're diagramming plays. I love what Mike McDaniel was doing those first few weeks. And I just wanted to share one Tyreek Hill stat I got through with my Word article was he's first in since 2013 in yards per route run, and he's second in first downs per route. So like Tyreek Hill is a good player. I think we knew this, how much they gave up, but doesn't matter who he's playing. Doesn't matter who he's playing with. He's playing phenomenal football right now, historical level football even. But I just want to see them get back on track to how they were rolling those first couple of weeks.
We talked about all the man coverage that the Chiefs are seeing now that Tyreek Hill is not in the Chiefs lineup anymore.
Yeah. This
season, no quarterbacks have seen less man coverage than Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater. 10% of dropbacks for Teddy Bridgewater, 8% of dropbacks for Skylar Thompson were man coverage because of Tyreek Hill. I'm sure Jalen Waddle affects that to a degree.
Yeah.
But Tyreek Hill Jalen Waddle was on the team last year, and teams played a lot of man coverage against the Dolphins. Yeah. Tua is 22nd in the NFL. About 23% of his dropbacks have been against man this year. So still bottom third of the league. Teams are not willing to play a lot of man with Tyreek in the lineup. So it's been a lot of cover 6, a lot of cover 2. That's what you've seen. Just cloud coverages, really a lot of space in the coverage. So if you're going to play those, there's a lot of space to exploit. Yes. And that is what Tua was doing really well for the first couple of weeks of the season. Think about how many throws he was placing over linebackers in front of safeties. His ability to kind of place those throws in intermediate areas is pretty impressive. He does a really good job with it. So far this season, he has the highest EPA in the league against cover 6 and cover 2, 21 of 30 for 289 yards and 3 touchdowns. Small sample, but still worth mentioning. He was doing a very good job at attacking those specific kinds of defenses designed to keep a roof over them. And I want to see them lean back into that version of their offense, and I think he can help them do that.
And that was even against the Bills when they were running some safe coverages on third down. And I mean, even the Ravens had botches on the blitzes, was that they're in attack mode, which is awesome. It's not, it's 3rd and 12. We can't do what we want to do. Let's check it down and punt. No, they're going for big plays, which is awesome, which is not what you would expect to do with a quarterback like Tua, who is not really a big game hunter. He's more, he's a kind of a nickel dime aficionado. And I think that's what's kind of cool is that, in those circumstances, they're like, no, let's launch it. We got these guys that no one can keep up with, and they're going to break the rules. And that's the gravity, is that they take everybody else off the screen, literally, and Tua can just find guys underneath, and it opens up so much for everybody else. And I think that Patriots game in week 1, you could see what happens when teams did try to go mad. They're like, we can't keep up with this. This is too much gas for us to cover all for 60 minutes. So it's been cool watching that offense because it's so unique.
One thing worth mentioning beyond the Tua stuff, if they protect like they did against the Vikings last week, it won't matter who's playing quarterback.
Yeah.
So Teron Armstead being out, which he potentially might be again with that toe injury,
that's so bummer,
is almost as important, I think, as who's playing quarterback for Miami right now. Not quite, right? But I think it is a huge element in them being able to get back to where they were in weeks 1 through 4 when Tua was playing. If they come back and like, man, Tua's back, but they look awful, the answer is probably because their left tackle is not playing now, and he was for the first 3 weeks of the season.
Right. And in the middle offensive line, which had question marks about, is actually becoming exposed as the season comes along. No, that's a very good point.
All right. Dak back for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
What is the thing you're looking for most?
I was trying to find some stat, something to show like what the difference was other than the Dak's numbers, and like the true dropback, which I brought up on the last show, was that he's so much better in that, like true dropbacks being non-play action and no screens. But the one number that I think is most significant from the play calling with Dak last year compared to what they did with Cooper Rush, the Cowboys play calling, was under center on 1st and 2nd down.
That's exactly what I had.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
So 10% more is what the number I had, about 10%. And Dak's really good under center. He's a very good quarterback from under center. He can do this. Lean into it. That's one adjustment. They're like, oh, we did this with Cooper Rush. Let's keep doing it with Dak. And then you get Dak onto the 3rd down point everything out and get everything right. I thought it was significant, though, was that Cooper Rush was one of the best quarterbacks in the league against pressure, against blitzes, I should say, 5 or more, which Dak has historically been one of the best ones, too. So I want to credit tying in our discussion from the first part of the show about how sorting out pressures and getting to the right look, right protection, I should say, leads to big plays. And I think that's where Dak has that. Cooper Rush did a good job, but Cooper Rush does all that kind of hard stuff. Other stat I actually had too was Dak faced cover 2 last year about 16%, and there's been more cover 2 throughout the league. Cooper Rush only faced it on 3%. Like, it was a lot of teams. We're not too worried about what you're going to do against us. So there's going to be a little difference probably the coverages played against them.
All right, we do not have time to answer any mailbag questions, but I do want to play a couple of the voicemails that you guys sent in this week. You really brought it, and I appreciate that.
I'm excited.
Hey, Nate and Robert, big fan of the show. Just calling in out here in Seattle, listening to the Monday morning hangover, feeling pretty good about where the Seahawks are at in their rebuild and everything. I just wanted to ask a quick question. What do you think is more impressive? Winning 6 Super Bowls with Tom Brady or carrying Russell Wilson to 1 Super Bowl? Thanks.
The voicemails and general emails this week were a great way to check in with the mindset with a lot of these fan bases. The Seahawks are loving this. The victory lap that the Seahawks are taking right now. It doesn't. Gino playing well obviously helps. Yeah. But what Russ looks like right now is just a field. And
all the rookies look great. They got 2 like tackles, Tariq Woolen, Kenneth Walker. Like,
so the Seahawks are feeling awesome. Yeah. Other fan bases, not so much. Beller, play the next one.
Hey, Robert and Nate, this is Bill from Lincoln. How are the Packers this bad? Like, 7 first-round picks on defense. Seems like they should be able to stop the run. Why is it every year they're so bad at stopping the run? It feels like a decade they've been unable to stop the run. And then last game, we have the special teams. How are our special teams so bad? How is it in like the span of 7 games, they've had a blocked field goal and a blocked punt? How? I know. I get that a lot of them have been papered over by Rodgers for like 15 years and then Favre before him for 15 more. But I shouldn't be complaining, especially to a Bears fan. But my God. Is there any hope for this? Is this just scheme? Like, they seem like they have talent. Help me, guys. Help me.
That's where we are 6 games in. We had multiple questions about the Ravens being bad. Like, are the Ravens good? Do we know if the Ravens are good? Broncos fans just like wondering what life means. There was a lot of really good ones this week. So we will hopefully have time to answer a couple of those next week. We will definitely be asking for them again. You guys did a great job, guys. We had a 4th screen argument that was just the lyrics by to Juicy by Notorious B.I.G. That was the argument. That was it. That was the entirety of the email. We had one guy send in. It was just the lyrics to Higher by Creed. I don't know why. I love this. Put out a challenge for you guys last week to really up your game with the emails, the voicemails, and the 4th screen. And guess what? You did. You did. And I sincerely appreciate it. And we will be soliciting more voicemails next week because if they're good, we'll just play them on the show, even if we're not answering any questions. So really appreciate how you guys brought the fire. All right. Speaking of, it's time for Win My 4th Screen.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
All right. This week's winner is Brian Hassa. Brian says, as a Colts fan, I'm here to tell you that you should watch Colts Titans on your 4th screen. There are a lot of reasons to do it. The winner will lead the AFC South. Andrew Luck never lost to the Titans, but now the Titans have won 4 in a row. It's yet another Danico Autry revenge game. Will he wreck the Colts offensive line like he did 3 weeks ago? Will Matt Ryan maintain the form he showed against the Jags? Is the offensive line fixed? And what does a Colts offense with a fixed offensive line look like when Jonathan Taylor is back? Think about it from the perspective of Frank Reich and Chris Ballard. A resounding win probably saves their jobs. A bad loss could prompt Jim Irsay to call Sean Payton's agent. We may even get another tarmac video. Think of the drama. But here's the thing, Robert. None of it fucking matters. None of it. The Colts and Titans are NPCs, non-playable characters. This is filler entertainment in the background of a real NFL game where only Casey and Buffalo matter. The Colts and Titans without the guy at quarterback in a league dominated by teams with the guy at quarterback are going nowhere. We tell ourselves it matters, that it matters for the Colts to win the division. We'll even hang a banner, but it doesn't matter. Not really. Chris Ballard, if anything, has proven that team building without a transcendent player at quarterback is a cute little exercise that gives us something to talk about on daily podcasts while we pass the time and wait for the main event where the two best quarterbacks in the league decide which team goes to the Super Bowl. The Colts Titans is just another simulated game in Josh Allen's Madden career mode that helps decide when he destroys and who he destroys in the divisional round. So watch the Colts Titans game or don't, whatever. It doesn't matter. All the games in contention for your fourth screener with NFC teams. This is an autoplay week. The Colts and Titans will play a game that seems important to them, but in reality, it's just a random score that generated so the CPU can update the standings for week 8.
Hope this helps.
Hope this helps.
Thank you, Brian. That was wonderful.
The Colts Titans is just another game in Josh Allen's Madden career mode. Is really, really, really good.
Perfect.
That's really good. To be honest with you, Brian's not totally wrong.
No,
that is what the NFL feels like this year. So, Brian, congratulations to you. Kudos to you. And thank you to everyone who sent one in. You guys really did bring the fire this week. And I really hope that we continue this next week. All right. We have one more quick segment that we're going to do before we get out of here. Or two more. Sorry. We're going to 2 more quick segments before we get out of here.
Please, God, give me the answer.
All right. So each week starting now, I want to lay out one thing that we want to know by the time Sunday's games wrap up. One thing to look forward to. And mine is actually about those NPCs that Patrick Mahomes is going to play in the wild card round. I want to know who's going to take the upper hand in the AFC South. It probably doesn't matter, just like Brian said, but I am curious about it. Like, who is going to take that division and who is going to play in the playoffs? And this Colts-Titans game could go a long way in determining that. Can the Jags beat the Giants, or is this going to be another just truly disappointing season for them? So because I am disgusting and have just a totally bleak life, I am going to be paying attention to how the AFC South starts to situate itself this weekend.
God, you're just getting into the muck.
That's
my territory, man. that's my dirt. I love playing around in that pigsty. No, but I for me is interesting division. But I just said, what exactly are you, Ravens? I want to see them. They're 6.5 point favorites going into this game. Okay matchup, but I want to see how they handle it. I want to see how they handle this Browns team. I want to see just what they look like. I know they have battled injuries. I just want to see what the Ravens are. Can they put together a 4-quarter game where they look confident outside of week 1, against the Joe Flacco Jets? Like, I want to see this team put together a full game and look how I think the Ravens can look, even with the injuries.
All right. That's a great one. That game is circled for me. All right. Let's get to our picks of the week really quickly before we get out of here.
Boo Jimmy's Lock of the Week.
Ooh, that's a big lock, all right.
I love that one. This is so good. Those are just treats. Every sound drops.
How could you not love a good Simpsons drop right there?
Exactly. So, I think I said to you guys that I had no idea who Jimmy was, what that was a reference to when I watched The Simpsons.
Why would you?
Yeah.
I know.
Why would you?
Parents exposed me to a lot of R-rated movies and references at a very early age, and also said, "Don't swear. Like, if you swear, you're in trouble." As I'm watching like Terminator 2 and stuff at like 6.
All right, I was 3-2 last week. Switching to the Bucks from the Jets is just a particularly heartbreaking moment. I was going to have that right. This was the last one. I deserve that. I absolutely deserve that. I'm 13-17 on the year. I promise you, it's not going to get better after this week. I pretty much just picked games at random from the entire slate. I thought about them, and then I clicked on it, and then I was like, that doesn't seem right. And then I clicked off of it, and then I changed them about 10 different times. Here is my reasoning for all of my picks this week. Okay. The Browns are getting 6.5 in the run your pool line against the Ravens. That's too many points. Like, I don't think I don't know how good the Ravens are. I don't know how bad the Browns are. Mm-hmm. This is the type of season where, like, if you're getting almost a touchdown and you're not definitively worse, I think, than the team that you're playing against, I'm just taking the points. So that's my thought process with the Browns and the Ravens.
Yeah.
I'm going against that theory, and I'm taking the Bengals minus 5.5 against the Falcons. I think the Bengals have hit a little bit of a stride on offense in the sense that they are figuring some stuff out. I also think their defense is really good. So I could see them being a touchdown better than the Falcons at home. And I didn't really like many of the other lines. Similar thought process with the Colts and the Titans. I don't think either of those teams are better than the other. I'm going to take the Colts getting 2.5 points in that game.
Yes.
They're getting points. Whatever.
Talk about welcome back on the Colts.
Right? We had them in the shadow realm for the last few weeks, and we pulled them back in.
And I'm not happy about it. No one's proud of it. I have the Texans plus 6.5 against the Raiders. Similar thinking. It's like, I don't think the Raiders are 6.5 points better than anyone. They might be, but I truly have no idea. So I'm going to take the points there. And Patrick Mahomes giving less than a field goal to anyone, especially against the Niners team that may be really beat up on defense. I'm taking the Chiefs minus 2.5.
Okay. I totally understand. It seems like just take points. It's kind of like not a bad strategy.
Yeah, but then you get to a place where you're taking the Texans,
or you're taking or last weekend it's like, oh yeah, like I'm really going to bet on the Steelers offense, like against the Bucks, and yeah, it turned out that was okay. But no, last week I went 3-2. I'm actually okay with that. I'm okay with my 3-2. We all talked ourselves into that Broncos bet, which I was pretty like, good job. That was studying.
Good job, us.
That was studying, worked out right in that game. But overall, I'm 17-13. I'm okay with that. First one, I'm going with the Falcons plus 5.5. I think they have covered every spread so far this year. I think they're undefeated.
It's probably the correct choice. I don't know why I picked the Bengals.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like that's just me jinxing it right then and there. The Bengals they do have a good defense. They do have some issues in the interior front right now, some injuries. The Falcons, what do they like to do? Pound that rock. Yeah. So maybe they can muck it up. They run a lot of cover 2. Dean Pease does, and that's given Burrow some issues. So I'm curious if they can get them. Next one, Jaguars minus 2.5 hosting the Giants. I feel awful about this. I think the Jaguars have turned into pumpkin. They realize, oh yeah, we have nobody that can go deep. We have nobody. Everything that I thought about the Jaguars' offensive skill players has come true. I should have just stuck with my gut, and I got talked into it by going, oh no, yeah, they can really make it
early season excitement.
Yeah, Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram and everybody else. Zay Jones is their top outside weapon, and Marvin Jones is still running wrong routes. Yeah, that's really going great. Next, I'm on the Colts too. I grabbed them back from the shadow realm, out the gulag. They got a reprieve. I don't know, but plus 2.5. The Titans, I have no idea what to make of the Titans. I think the Colts found a little bit of a strike against the Jaguars, but then that just is my counter argument against the Jaguars and betting on them. So let's just not think about this for too long. Next one, I'm going Cowboys hosting the Lions, minus 6.5. Great get right game for Dak to come back against this Lions defense. I just also think that this Cowboys defense can really muck up. I really like what that Lions offensive line does and everything, and I love their run game and everything. But I just want to see. I think this Cowboys offense is going to have a big advantage against them, and they're at home. Maybe a little Dak excitement. Dak is back. Next, last one. Same thing. Chiefs minus 2.5 at the 49ers. Same line of thinking, especially if the 49ers defense does get banged up early or they aren't as healthy as we're hoping that they can be. I want this to be a good game. I think this Chiefs team is a good team, though. And, yep, minus 2.5, less than a field goal. I'm going to take it with Patrick Mahomes.
Awfully hard to ignore that Chiefs minus 2.5. I'm going there too, you guys. 3-2 for me. Last week, 19-11 on the season. Let's keep it rolling. Couple of unanimous picks, Chiefs being one of them. Everything you guys said, I'll just move right on. Colts. We were destined to come back to the Colts one of these weeks with all three of us being on them without like a great reason to do it.
No.
And especially against the Titans, like it's perfect. It's perfect.
I am a spineless person with absolutely no willpower or integrity. Like I actively loathe myself 85% of the time. And this Colts situation is exactly why.
This is perfect. It's like we all blacked out on.
I just spent so much of my time wishing I was a different person than I am. And this exact thing with the Colts is the ultimate epitome of that.
It's like we all blacked out on September 6th and like thought what we thought about the Colts and Titans then, and then woke up today. We're like, oh my God, Colts getting 2.5 against the Titans. Let's do this.
Let's do it.
It feels like they did figure something out with the offensive line last week, right? They're getting Jonathan Taylor back. Get those huge numbers for Michael Pittman, and Alec Pierce had another nice game. Like it does feel like the offense maybe at least turned a corner last week. So I feel okay about that pick. I am with you, Robert, against Nate. I like the Bengals minus 5.5. Another team that seems like it did figure something out with that all shotgun offense last week. So I'll go ahead and trust the Bengals here. My last two picks, I'm jumping right on tonight, getting things started tonight. Cardinals minus 1.5 against the Saints. DeAndre Hopkins back for the Cardinals. One player can't make an offense, but last year, the first 7 games before DeAndre got hurt, here's what this team did. 38 points, 34 points, 31 points, 37 points, then 17 against the 49ers. And DeAndre had 6 catches for 87 yards and a touchdown, 37 points, 31 points. So this is a different offense with DeAndre Hopkins healthy. I think
that was like 4 versions of Call of Duty ago, though. Like, I don't.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point, but I'm going to go ahead and risk that and go ahead and bet on the Cardinals to cover the 1.5. And then this is sort of a game the system play for me. Jets are plus 3.5 in run your pool against the Broncos. In real life, they're just plus 1. I want nothing to do with the plus 1. I would maybe even like the Broncos minus 1. But at plus 3.5, this just has all the makings of a field goal game. I know I'm buying high on the Jets with this line, but I still feel like at the 3.5 number that we get in the pool, I would go ahead and take it. I'm not touching Jets plus 1, which is what you have to do right now if you want to bet on it for real. But at 3.5, I'll jump on and make that my 5th pick in this pool.
That might be a 6-3 game.
That's gonna be
certainly could be. Either way,
I
feel
I'm
good.
curious about that game. That might get a screen for me. That might be a game that win my 3rd screen.
We spent so much time talking about ugly football. Zach Wilson, I believe his passer rating under pressure this year is like 2. And the Broncos have the best pass rush and the highest pressure rate in the NFL. Listen, I don't think the Broncos are going to do much against what the Jets defense has been like.
Right.
But we're talking about the Broncos being able to muck up any game they play in. This is another one of those.
Right. And we talk about those simulated pressures giving Shanahan offenses some issues. That's where Mike LaFleur's from. So we'll see. I'm curious about that game.
Beautiful.
That's where we're at. We're excited about potential 6-3 games. That's where we're at.
All right. Speaking of the Cardinals and DeAndre Hopkins, we are back tonight on YouTube to recap Cardinals Saints. God, again, our choices. Please come back. The only places you can listen to that is on YouTube. Excited about that. It's going to be great. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can do that in the description to this podcast if you're listening. You can do it if you're watching this. Please subscribe to The Athletic, theathletic.com/football show, where you can read Nate's 3rd season awards, the 30s, and all of our other NFL coverage. We will be back on YouTube tonight. Other than that, we'll be back on Sunday night recapping week 7. Until then, appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you soon.